My name is Mark Sorensen Wagner. I'm the Director of Career Development for St. Thomas. And I'm really excited to have you here. We're excited to welcome you and your students into our community, and I can't wait to start to meet them when they show up on campus in the fall. So today we're going to just talk a little bit about what we do in our office. So the Career Development Center is over in Murray Herrick Hall. You can't see it because I'm just pointing that way. It's about 3 buildings away from here. We're on the first floor. So it's a great place to stop by. We have a lot of students who just come by because we have nice space and they want to study. And yeah, that's us. It's the afternoon. I'm off topic. I'll try to stay on topic. So a little bit about us in terms of how we support your students. The first thing is almost all students who are coming straight into college from high school are in some form of exploration. Whether they're still exploring what academic major do I want to pick, I have lots that I'm interested in, or I just really don't know what the opportunities are. We support those students in a lot of ways in trying to help them narrow down what's a good fit for them. We get a lot of students who'll walk in the door and say, I know that I want to major in psychology, and my mom was a counselor, but I don't know what other kinds of things I could do with a major like that. So we'll help them start to explore job descriptions, other things specific to what you can do with different majors to help them figure out what's going to be the best fit for them. We also get a lot of students, I shouldn't say a lot, a fair number of students who walk in the door and say, listen, I know exactly what I want to do. I know exactly what it looks like after I graduate. What are you going to do to help me get there between today and 4 years from now? And a lot of that ends up helping those students explore working cultures and things like that. So working at a Fortune 500 company versus working at a startup. Working, like, for example, once I took a group of students out to Seattle to look at tech and consulting companies. And one student just fell in love with Boeing because, like, I could wear collared shirts to work. I'm like, yeah, that's great. And then the same day we went and visited Amazon, and another student was like, I love Amazon because I can bring my dog to work. So not only is it about the work sometimes, it's about the culture, it's about the people, it's about the environment, all of those things. So even as students start to figure out what's the best fit for them in terms of major and then potentially career options, we also start to help them with all those more nuanced things because we want them to land in a place that's going to get them excited and launch them for the rest of their careers in the best way possible. Going forward, and I didn't cover any of the topics. So that's what we do in terms of exploration. As students start to make some sense of what are the best fits for them, the best way to narrow in on what they want to do is to get them experience. So most of our students will either do an internship, they'll do a co-op, which is kind of an engineering specific thing. They will do undergraduate research, student teaching, all of those kinds of things, because we know one of the best ways to make good decisions about career worlds is to try things out. And for a lot of students, especially, a lot of students who come to St. Thomas have a lot of interests. It could be academic interests, it could be musical interests, sporting interests, all of these different things. And a lot of them are trying to figure out, how do I make sense of what I want to do for a career versus what do I want to do as a hobby or for volunteering or all these other things. But the best way to do it is to try it out and see what things look like. One of my favorite things to do is to work with students in the fall when they come back from their internships and they're like, the work was interesting, but gosh, I hate cubicles. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that, and what does that mean in terms of what's next for you, and how do we explore a better fit for you, and how do we make sure that you have the right questions when you start to do interviews next time to find something that's a better fit. Or some that are like, I really love this startup culture I was in, but I just want a job where I do a specific thing instead of a little bit of everything. I'm like, well, yep, then startup cultures might not be the best fit for you, so let's talk about what that could look like. So it's helping them understand all of those pieces, trying things out, because typically when employers come and look for entry-level talent, having those kinds of experiences are one of the top things that they want to see on a resume, because they know if a student has tried it out, whether it's research or whether it's internship or something like that, they have a sense of what they're actually getting themselves into, and they're less likely to get on their first job and in 3 months say, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So they want to make sure that they have people who have those experiences. We want to maximize them for students, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Once students have had these experiences, a big part of it is how do we help them communicate what they did? And that's through resumes, it's through interviewing answers, practice interviews, cover letters, all of those kinds of things, because we want to make sure that they are able to articulate the skills and other things that they did in a job or an internship or even a summer job is too. How do you translate that from what you did into something that's going to help you with whatever's next? Again, it might be another internship, it might be a graduate school application, it might be a full-time job, whatever that looks like. So a lot of times students sell themselves way short. Like they're like, I was an intern at KPMG. Like, great. That says nothing. Well, let's talk about what you actually did. Let's talk about day-to-day stuff, but also projects or just all the skills you use, interpersonal skills, the technical skills, everything that could, whether you decide to work for KPMG in the future or many other firms, we want to make sure that they can see all of that stuff on a resume that best supports what you did. So we spent a lot of time with students on that. And we'll talk more about this in a little bit on the next slide, but we know that one of the strongest correlations between a student finding success in their first job out of college or getting into a graduate school program is having some type of strong relationship with at least one employer. That sounds weird, but we know just because of that connection, and we'll talk about it in a minute, that is one of the strongest things that can help students launch after they graduate. So we spend a lot of time in our team. I have team members who their job is just to go out and build relationships with companies in the Twin Cities, the Midwest, and nationally, or to deepen those relationships to make sure that they're always coming to our events, that they are coming to our classrooms to talk to students, doing tabling or other things on campus. We want to make sure that students have the best access to employers because we know it can make a really big impact on their success after graduation. And the final thing I just want to mention on here is we recognize that a student's first job after graduation is not most likely, it shouldn't be, their last. And so we are here to support our Tommies for their entire life. They will have complete access to our coaching services, to all of our resources, our platforms that we use for job postings, for mentorship, all of those things for the rest of their lives. So we have folks on our team that specifically work with alums because job search support and exploration support looks a little different for a mid or late career person than it does for an entry-level person. So we make sure that we have expertise in a lot of different areas to support them no matter where they are. Now I can go to the second one. So we are not a required thing on campus. I mean, if you'd like to support me in making it required that a student come to the Career Center, that would be great, but we are not. So basically what we need to do is make sure students understand the value of working with us in some way. And so this is kind of how we think about everything we do. And the reason why we think about it this way is there's been some really interesting national research over the last 5 or 6 years we've been a part of that research study that have gone out and asked alums 5 and 10 years after graduation, what were the things you did as an undergrad that had the most positive impact on not only your ability to find a job right after graduation, but also set you up for success in terms of economic mobility, social mobility, and all these other things, job satisfaction with your second, third, and fourth jobs after graduation. And it boiled down to 6 things. These are the 6, we call them high-impact career practices. The 6 practices that we know have the strongest positive correlation with our alums being able to first find a job right after, either find a job, get enrolled in a graduate school program, get into the military, or do some kind of service learning like Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, stuff like that. We know these are the things that have the strongest positive correlation with having success in those areas. And because we know that, and we've seen it not only with the national data, but also with our data at St. Thomas, our job in the Career Center is to maximize students' access to all of these things. I've only been here a year and a half, so we're just kind of getting started with a lot of it, but everything we're going to be communicating with students goes back to how do we make sure we get you access to understanding the opportunities that are out there and having programs and things around that. Training faculty how to talk about things in a different way around the career piece. I talked about it earlier, networking with employers, receiving career advice. Faculty tend to be the strongest point of contact when it comes to career advice. So our job is to make sure our faculty have really good information to share. So these are things that your students will hear from us. They'll hear across campus from other folks as well. And we know this is just quickly, I won't even talk too much about it. We know that it makes a difference. For last year's graduating class, we knew that 94% of them had at least one high-impact practice by the time they graduated. And if you look at the last two pieces, you'll see that there was quite a bit of a difference between those who had at least one and those who did not have one in terms of their success finding that first job or getting into graduate school. So if we know it makes an impact, our job is to maximize opportunities over and over again, starting in their first year all the way into their last semester, to make sure they have access to all of these things to set them up for the best success possible. I feel like I'm just saying set them up for success 10 times because that's what we do. So, all right, I'm going to stop talking big picture, and I have a little bit of time, and talk really practical. So my oldest daughter just finished freshman year in college, and if you have your oldest who's coming to St. Thomas, like, may you handle it better than I did. Drop-off was a hot mess, but that's okay. But she had a great year. It was awesome. But when she came home for Thanksgiving break and I made her roll her eyes by asking, have you thought about a major? Have you thought about all of these things? Came home over winter break. What are you thinking in terms of doing with a genetics major? How does that look for you? Eye rolls. Spring break, Dad, don't even start with the questions because I don't want to answer them. So if you're in the position where you annoy your children or your students in any way because you're asking about what do you want to do with that major, or have you thought about a major, or how are you deciding what to pick, I wanted to give you a handful of things that might be helpful. Or you could just say, I met this annoying guy at Mark, and he's happy to help you too. So the first one, we're in the process, we're going to be launching it on September 1st, is a virtual career center. I should say quite a bit more in-depth than just a regular website. We have found that students want to access our resources online. The most popular time is between 10 p.m. and midnight. And I'm not really interested in being open as an office during that time, so how do we make sure that we get our students the things they need in the times they need it? So whether they're just thinking broadly about, all right, tomorrow I'm going home to meet with Mom and Dad for the weekend, I need to at least have some language around something I did, or say, yes, I use the resources at the Career Center. Or there's someone who is like, I have an interview tomorrow, and I haven't thought about what kind of questions I want to ask as part of that. They have access to everything that we have. And what's exciting to me is I'm going to show you a couple more resources. What we're building with our virtual career center aggregates information from like our job posting system. So if a student is going in to explore what it's like to work in accounting or consulting or something like that, they're going to start to see jobs and internships in that specific area. On those pages, they're also going to see alumni mentors who have said, yes, I want to work with our students who have backgrounds in that area as well. So we're trying to get students access to all those pieces as easily as possible, because sometimes websites don't let us do it. So that's going to be launching right before the semester starts. Handshake is the job posting system that we use. It's kind of the tool that most universities in the United States and many of them in Europe are using. It's a great resource in a lot of ways. If any company wants to post a job or an internship or anything similar to that for any of our students at St. Thomas, it goes into this system. So if you ever have a student who's saying, hey, or you're pushing them to think about that first internship or whatever it is, it's easy to say, have you set up your Handshake account? It's free, it's easy, it pre-populates a lot of their stuff. Just by being a student here, it makes it super simple. If they have a resume, it's even more simple because you just upload your resume and it builds out your profile for you, so it's fantastic in that way. I have found that it's one of the best filters. Like if you've ever thought about Indeed or Monster, I don't know if Monster exists anymore, but all of those kind of websites, this has some of the best filters that I've worked with in terms of students who are like looking for a position in Omaha or something like that. There's some great opportunities to get connected that way. It's also the system we use for students to register for our career fairs. We do St. Thomas career fairs in September and February. We also are part of some consortium career fairs for private schools in Minnesota and things like that. All of that goes in here. There's some very specific fairs like an accounting fair, an engineering fair, and things like that. Information about all of those things go into the system, so it's easy for students to find. We'll also have those events then posted to that virtual career center we were talking about before. So making that simple, it's also the place where a student can go in and set up a one-on-one appointment with any member of our team. So maybe they know exactly who they want to work with, or you could say, please just don't work with Mark. He seems a little odd and rambles sometimes. They could pick who they want to work with, or they can go in and just say, I need to find someone who's available next week at 2 p.m. And make that happen. So all of that stuff happens through Handshake to make it as simple as possible for your students. So again, if they're not knowing where to start, just setting up their profile in Handshake to kind of go and look at job postings and things like that is a great way to get started, and it's an easy thing to do. We also have a lot of first-year students who we direct them to Handshake just to look at job descriptions. Like if they're still kind of exploring what's possible with different majors that they're interested in, we'll have them go in there and just poke around and say, first of all, who are the kinds of companies who are hiring St. Thomas students in that area, so you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. But also, let's talk about the job descriptions. What's the work look like? What kind of expectations and skills and things like that do they expect from you? So it's a great way for them to kind of think about things without like really committing to applying for jobs and stuff like that. The last one I wanted to talk a little bit about is St. Thomas Connect. So St. Thomas Connect is our mentorship platform. We originally set this up as a platform for long-term mentorship, so it's like year-long things where an alum and a student will meet 4 or 5 times per year. As parents and guardians, you probably know that students right now aren't necessarily looking for that kind of commitment. Most of them are looking for something in the moment. They're saying, I want to be able to connect with an alum if I have a question about their employer. So if I'm interested in going to Medtronic to work, I'd love to connect with some about their experience, about the hiring process, and build a relationship to see if they'd be willing to vouch for me as I apply for different things. Or they might say, I'm really interested in investment banking. I would love to see who's out there and ask them about this crazy application process and stuff that goes along with that. So that if they have specific questions, that's how they're using the system right now. So we have thousands of alums who have said yes. They are the ones who've gone into the system, built their profiles specifically to work with your students. And so we don't see a lot of ghosting. I'm really hip, right? Because I say things like ghosting. But if a alum does not get back to a student within 2 days, our office gets pinged straight away, and then we have someone reach out to them and say, hey, you didn't return the email or call from that student. You got to get on that within the next 24 hours. So we make sure that that continues to happen and your students have good experiences. So between those three resources, the virtual career fair, Handshake as a job posting system, and St. Thomas Connect as a place for your student to connect with alums who have said yes and they want to connect and help your students through all this career stuff. There's some really easy things to get them started without having to do a lot of investment of time and really getting overwhelmed with all the other things that could happen. So I know a lot of students, especially in their first year, when they're overwhelmed with classes, they don't want to get overwhelmed with other stuff. So if we can make it as easy as possible for them to do these, that's what we're here to do. I feel like I'm talking really fast. Sorry about that. Last slide from me, and then I'll get out of your way. The thing I just wanted to point out, I've been doing this work for about 25 years, and it's pretty fun. The one thing I would say is, when you have a student who's exploring, it's going to look different for everybody. And there's a lot of anxiety sometimes around what that looks like, because it's very personal in terms of the future, not only at St. Thomas and what does it look like in terms of classes and degrees, but also what is that going to lead to. If your student comes home for winter break or whenever they come home and they say, listen, I'm still feeling really, really confused about what the options are for me. All students in the first year experience class, and most students take that during their first semester of their freshman year, they take a career assessment called Pathway U. In class, they probably devote about half an hour to that. It's a group, as a group they talk about it, but they don't really get into the specifics of a student's individual results. If they're kind of struggling when they talk to you, send them to us. We'll sit down with them in their individual results and talk through what that looks like, talk through what are some options, and help them build out next steps to kind of get a little bit more concrete and things they can do to kind of get ready for the future. The other thing, you'll probably hear this 1,000 times between now and the beginning of the semester, but joining student organizations is a great way for students to connect and learn from older students about where they are in terms of deciding on majors and deciding on careers. And it's also a place where a lot of companies will come in and connect with students, so it's a great way to network with employers and get to understand a little bit more about internships and jobs and things like that. again, working in this world for a long, long time, I am incredibly positively shocked at how involved St. Thomas alums want to be in the lives of our students in a very positive, good way. They're just like, tell me how I can help. What are the little things I can do? Whether it's a mentor program, a formal mentor program, can I come talk to a class? Can I come hang out outside of a career fair and just talk about whatever they need to have someone, a trusted voice, talk about? So building, we call it the Tommy Network. It's very easy, and the other great thing is that St. Thomas alum like to hire St. Thomas alums, so if we can get folks connected within an organization they're interested in, it's been really good. Starting resumes, I know that sounds super practical, like they should start looking for jobs now. I don't mean it in that way. What I like to get started with first-year students on is building a resume so they start to get the pattern of how to talk about their experiences. My oldest worked in retail at the Gap and said, I have nothing to talk about. I worked in retail. Everyone knows what that means. I'm like, everyone assumes they know what that means, but how can you talk about the things you learned at the Gap that could help you with that first research experience that you're trying to get with your faculty member? So a lot of it is teamwork, interpersonal communication, dealing with ambiguity, surprisingly dealing with conflict a lot more than you would think in a place like the Gap, but great stories there. So helping them build out those pieces and sharing all the other experiences, whether it's a summer job, whether it's being on a sports team, being the captain of the debate club, all of those kinds of things. How to use those to your advantage to set yourself up as someone who's going to be a good fit for whatever's next for you. The last thing is things are going to change, and students are going to be thinking about a lot of different things. Coming to college, they see a lot of amazing things happen, and they see other people doing really cool things, and they're trying to figure out what's the right fit for them. So almost every student thinks about changing majors. Some do it, some don't. A lot of them think about what this could look like for them, or adding a major and minor and stuff like that, and it's okay. You're going to see that over the next year or two as they start to figure out what's the best fit. If they ever feel stuck, just please let them know that there's a whole team of folks on campus who are here just to help them kind of work through all of those things. And again, we're in Murray Herrick Hall, first floor. You can vouch for me if you want, or say, I'm sure he's probably got people that are less talkative than he is and will help you on his team, but we're just here to help. So whenever they're ready for us, we're here to support them. So I have like a minute or two if there's any questions. It's like the afternoon, everyone's like, I'm not raising my hand. I'm not going to do it. I can get out of here faster. I get it. Well, anyway, I'll kind of go outside those doors for a few minutes just in case anyone wants to connect. Otherwise, we're so happy you're here. So can't wait to meet your students. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.